Now you get story credit
Yes.
on the film. Talk about the development of that story idea and what it was you had and how that evolved into a screenplay.
Yeah, so here's the sort of story of how it came together, because I think that answers, I mean, it'll be a good
Sure.
journey.
Oh, fine.
So, so I really love Nick Rutherford, who plays Cal, and he's a writer as well. And he was a part of Good Neighbor, which was a comedy group. The guys went to USC, actually. And Kyle Mooney and Beck Bennett and Nick Rutherford, they were an improv group. And they made a lot of online comedy videos, and I just always watched them, and I followed them. And then they eventually kind of disbanded, and some of the guys went to Saturday Night Live, and then like Nick went as a writer, and then he ended up going his own direction as an actor, and I always followed his work. But so I had this idea for The Unicorn, and it was about, you know, a couple that are wondering, is this an experience that might work for us? And the story goes, I'll tell you how it sort of happened. My wife is here, Zoe's here. Hey, babe. There she is. Hey, babe. Babe. Anyway, we were together. We weren't married yet, but we were at a bar in New York City, and this woman came over and said she was a unicorn, and gave us her number. And we said, what is that? I've never heard of that. She said, well, I seek out couples, like hook up with couples. And it just was like a bizarre, we all laughed, and it was kind of like awkward, but nothing happened. She gave the number, and then we joked about, like, what is that? I've never heard of that. I Googled like unicorn, it came up as a real term. Anyway, so I held on to that as just a little jumping off point for like a story, because it seemed, you know, the jumping off place was, what if you did go through with that? What would that be like? And how uncomfortable that would be if you're not really maybe built for it. Am I built for it? What would happen if we did it? So I just think it was sort of like a little bit of like a jumping off place for a story, and I try to keep track of little, you know, one sentence jumping off places for a story. And then I took that to Nick, and we hung out, we had mutual friends, and I said, hey, I have an idea for a movie, I think you should star in it. And I'd love if we could write it together and work on it together. And I pitched him the idea, and it was gonna be one person they meet, and the whole movie was gonna be like in a hotel room with someone, like that April scene in the end with Dree Hemingway. It was almost like that was the movie, but stretched out. And then as we started to beat it out, I mean, we started to basically pass back and forth a Google document with us just listing scenes for, you know, what if they did this? What if they did that? What about a character like this? So it was just a back and forth with Nick, just outlining, you know, moments and funny ideas for characters. And anyway, so that's how it sort of came together. And then we started this project in February of 2017, and then we shot in May of 2017. So we basically were like, we're going to shoot this movie at the end of May, and let's not, if we push, we're going to like lose it. So we've got to stick with it. And then we sped up on the screenplay. We basically brought in two other writers who Nick worked with, Will and Kirk, who are really funny improv guys. They're great writers or directors, editors. They work in many different sides of it. And they had worked with Nick before, so they jumped in, and those three guys sort of divided up the screenplay and shared the draft. And then we'd all take it back and make notes, cut things, try things. We had a whole opening of the movie that we just cut. We were going to start in LA, and they were going to be at dinner, and Nick was going to propose at dinner, and then they were going to be talking about going to Palm Springs, and they had this whole opening. And then we said, you know what, let's just cut it. Let's just start right in Palm Springs. Let's start, they pull up to the house, and they're waiting outside, and they don't want to go in, and then we get a lot out in that moment. So it was interesting, like, to see how it grew. Mm-hmm. But I think when you make an independent feature and you have like not a lot of time, you just have to kind of figure out how can I tell this story with these pieces on the board? And that's, you know, I mean, that was the fun of it. It's like a puzzle piece of like, how do things fit together? How can I execute on this project with these pieces?